Welcome to Not Your Ordinary Parts podcast, a podcast where we talk about hard things associated with the human experience with the goal of increasing awareness, growth, and healing. You may hear information from professionally licensed therapists, life coaches, healers, doctors, etc. This information is not medical advice or therapy and is not meant to replace actual therapy or instructions given by a doctor or personal therapist. I'm your host, Jelon Johnson. My guest today is Clint Ober. Mr. Ober worked as an electrician in the communications industry and is the innovator behind the grounding movement. Following a major health challenge in 1995, Mr. Ober discovered that grounding the human body to the earth normalizes the functionings of the body's systems, and the body utilizes the earth's electrical potential and free electrons to maintain its internal electrical stability, normalizing all of its self-regulating and self-healing systems. As an electrician, Mr. Ober understood the principles of electricity and used his knowledge to spearhead the groundbreaking earthing movement. So, Mr. Ober, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Well, thanks for having me on, and we'll have a nice little conversation on and hopefully it's beneficial to your listeners.
So happy to have you. Of course, I just gave a bit of an introduction, but what I wanted to do was to give you an opportunity to tell your story and your journey with grounding and how you discovered the benefits of grounding.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll just tell a little bit of the history about myself so you can kind of know how it came about. First of all, I'm 79 years old, so when I talk about things, sometimes I'm talking about, back, I grew up on a ranch in Montana, and we had cattle, and so I have a very earthy background, meaning taking care of animals, taking care of crops, taking care of all those kind of things, but living on the land. This was before television. So anyhow, but I grew up in that earthy environment, and then I also grew up next to a couple of Native American reservations in southeastern Montana, the Crow and the Cheyenne, and so anyhow, I just have I guess I'm more of a naturalist, naturist because of growing up in that environment, and I always look to. It's like when you're. This all ties into the story, but it's like when you're taking care of animals and you have a pasture, you have to babysit the cows, ride them, you have to be out there with them a lot. And then you have to keep an eye on them to make sure they're all healthy, to make sure that, they're all acting the same. And the concept behind it, if the pasture is clean and pristine, you'll have healthy cows that put on weight, and you'll make some money off raising cattle. If you let the pasture, so what you're looking for is animals that aren't well or something's wrong with them. The first thing you do is you go ride the pasture, check and make sure there's no noxious weeds, check the water, make sure the water is fine, ride up or downstream and find and make sure there's no animals, a dead animal or something in the water upstream. But there's something, if a cow gets sick, there's something in the pasture that is contributing to that. So the concept is, I've always had this prevention note. If there's something wrong with, with one of the kids, they're sick, well, what's going on in the pasture? What are you eating? What are you thinking? What's going on? But there's always something that promotes unhealth, because in nature, health is our most natural state. And we see that in the animal world. The animals are by and large are healthy. They don't have inflammation-related health disorders. They don't have, cardiovascular disease, any of the modern health disorders, where animals who live indoors, they all manifest similar health disorders to their owners, especially inflammation-related. It's like cancer is 50% of indoor animals die from cancer. Cancer rarely exists in nature. So So there's so anyhow, that's kind of what the story is about here. But anyhow, I spent 30 years after that in the communications industry, primarily cable television, satellite, and so on. And and in that industry, we had to ground everything to the earth. If a cable is running into your home, whether it's a telephone cable, um, cable television, or it has to have a ground rod driven in the earth beside your house, and they splice the cable and connect it to a ground rod. The internal part of the cable goes into the house, connects to a TV, let's say, and the jacket of the cable before it goes into the house, it's metal and it's connected to the ground rod. So if there's any charge, like lightning, static electricity, any electrical noise, um, and especially lightning, because lightning will create fire. And so anyhow, you ground this to the earth so that in the event of an electrical event, there's everything in the house is safe. If you don't ground it, then a charge can come down the line, go into the home, blow up the TV set, start a fire, and burn a house down. And these things have happened over the years, back in the long time ago, in the the early days of cable, in the late 50s, 60s, early 60s, because we didn't know how sensitive everything was to ground. But anyhow, so that's the concept. So I spent 30 years grounding or involved in an industry where everything had to be grounded, connected to the earth. The reason you connect things to the earth, because the earth is what we call a sink, meaning electrically, that means it can absorb charge like lightning or static electricity, or it can release, electrons can come up the ground wire into the home, and it's like a lot of your computers, your refrigerator, a lot of your devices in your home are grounded. The chassis, the housing on your refrigerator is grounded, and your computer chassis and so on. And this is to, in case there's a wire or something breaks or gets loose or whatever, then it'll ground it out to the earth to prevent an electrical shock or anything in the home. So, and by and large, most people are totally unaware of grounding in their living environment. But everything electrical is grounded in order to maintain electrical stability, meaning the lights have to maintain a certain voltage. You can't have brownouts. You can't have, so it's a very managed system, but it has to be connected to the earth to work properly in order for charge to go up and down, in order to maintain this electrical balance. So anyhow, the main thing is I have a 30-year background in grounding electronics, sensitive electronics, and I was involved in the early days of the development of putting signals over satellites, and then the computer industry developed, and then we have more sensitive things, so we needed even more better grounding. You had to have really good grounding so you could have clean pictures, nice data transmission, good sound, all of these things that we all take for granted when we turn on the TV set today. So anyhow, and then I spent 30 years after I retired when I was about 50, and I'm 79, so it's about 29 years ago. And anyhow, I did okay in the cable industry. Most people who are in it did. And but I retired from it. I ended up with an abscess in a tooth that got into my blood system and created an abscess in my liver. And so I went through one of those life events where you almost didn't make it. And when I recovered from that, I kind of lost my interest in going out and chasing the buck, because once you come close to death, you kind of know that, hey, you are mortal. You can, your life can be over in an instant. And but anyhow, so I when I recovered from that, I never went back to work in business. I didn't need to. And about 4 years after I survived that, I spent about several years driving around the United States, spending a lot of time in national parks because I grew up in the woods in Montana, so I'm kind of an outdoor person. And anyhow, I wanted to do something worthwhile, something that I felt better about, meaning rather than just trying to make money and playing war, with everybody in business. So one day I was in Arizona and in a tourist area, and a tour bus pulled up, and it was full of. It was a Japanese tour group. They were kind of short in stature, but they had these big white Nike shoes on, the tennis shoes, and it looked like they had just been to a strip mall and all bought these particular shoes were on sale because they were all white, and everybody bought a pair, and it just kind of looked kind of funny because the focus was on their feet. And for some reason, intuitively, I just asked the question to myself. I thought, I wonder if there's a problem with wearing these rubber soled shoes, because when I was a child, we were always barefoot. We never wore shoes unless it was to church, to school, or we had to wear them. And so I didn't really know, and I went home that night, and I took a voltmeter out and started measuring the electrical charges on my body when I had shoes on, in the house, outdoors, didn't matter, and then measuring all of the electrical noise that's in the home. And so anyhow, that night, just playing around, and most people wouldn't know to even think this way or do this, but having this background that I had with grounding electronics or electrical equipment, I just said to myself, well, I'm just going to, I went and bought some 3-inch wide metal duct tape, laid it on my bed, and then connected it to a wire, threw it out the window, connected it to a little ground rod in the earth, and then I went up to my bedroom, laid down on it, took a voltmeter, and verified that I was at earth potential, meaning I had the same electrical energy on my body as the surface of the earth. Because earth is negative, meaning you can't have any charge when you're grounded to the earth. So anyhow, sure enough, all the electrical noise disappeared. But most profoundly, that night, I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and I thought, wow, there's something really going on here. I didn't know. I was just playing with the voltmeter, just playing with electrical stuff. But I was laying on the tape. I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning, and I had a voltmeter laying next to my side. And the thing that got my attention is at that time, I was in my early 50s. I had more pain. I had enough pain in my body. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck most of the time because of my age. I mean, I skied for 30 years. I was a crazy cowboy, and you name it. I broke an ankle with tennis. I've had back surgery. I've had everything you can imagine. But yeah, so my body was full of pain. And I remember one day going outdoors, looking at the sky, and saying, God, why did you make my body with so much pain in it? And anyhow, I got the answer. He didn't. I did. But anyhow, so I set about to do a couple of tests, and then I grounded a couple of friends where I was living, and one of them had severe arthritis, and one of them had real sleep problems. And so both of them started sleeping better. But a couple of days later, one of the guys with arthritis came over, and he said, do you think this could be affecting my arthritis? And I said, no, I don't think so. I think it just helps with sleep. And then all of a sudden I realized that all of my pain, my chronic pain, began to resolve and disappear. And so I said, wow, there's really something going on. How can I, so I went on the internet back in the late 90s. There wasn't much there. You had AOL. So it's hard to find information there. So I went down to the University of Arizona in Tucson, went to the medical libraries, and started looking at why does grounding the body reduce pain, and how come nobody knows about it? And so I couldn't find anything in the normal literature about what causes pain or what makes pain go away other than aspirin and those kind of things. And I did learn that you have to ground the body when you have open heart surgery and things like that to prevent static sparks or static electricity from promoting a cardio event. But that's the only thing that I could come across at that time. So anyhow, I thought, well, I got to go somewhere where somebody knows what's going on here. So I went out to UCLA and I went to the sleep lab there and told them what I was doing. I ground somebody, they sleep better, the pain goes away. And they looked at me and they said, if you expect us to believe that somebody's going to drive a nail in the ground, tie a wire around somebody's toe, and they're going to sleep better. He said, "Get out of here! You're nuts." But we played. We carried on for a little bit after that. But basically, I learned that the medical industry, by and large, knows little about environmental charge or electrical charges or just electrical period. And I knew nothing at that time about biology to speak of, other than taking care of cattle and keeping them healthy. And so anyhow, that's kind of how it all got started. But I ended up having to do my first study in Ventura, California. And in that study, we grounded 60 people to the earth, and 30 of them were live grounds, 30 of them were placebo grounds. And after we did the study, we found that everybody slept better, everybody had more energy, everybody felt better, they had less pain, less aches and pains, and some pretty remarkable stories. And so I gathered further evidence, which was what they told me at UCLA. You got to give more evidence so we can validate what you're talking about. And so I set about to do that. And so I ended up doing that study. Then I went down to San Diego and with a anesthesiologist group down there and did another study where we measured cortisol, 24-hour cortisol, which all of these studies that I mentioned there at the earthinginstitute.net. But anyhow, so we started doing these studies, and every time we did a study, we found that grounding has a profound effect on the body. And the main thing that it does is it reduces pain. And it wasn't until 202, 203, 204 that we found out that inflammation is what promoted pain. You have to have inflammation in your body first, and then that manifests as pain, so that your nervous system's telling you, "Get me out of here. I'm on fire. I've got inflammation in my body," or so on. So anyhow, I don't want to just go on too far here, but that's the concept of how it came about. It was just a series of about 7-8 years for it to really come together. And then since then, we have produced 30 peer-reviewed published studies. We have probably 50, 100 peer-reviewed or published papers in journals and so on. And so anyhow, that's kind of the essence of it. So I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you for that.
Sorry about the long dialogue.
No need to apologize. So I watched your short film Down to Earth, and in the film you mentioned a specific moment. I guess is when you were with the Cheyenne mother about to go into the teepee, and she said to you, "Take your shoes off; they'll make you sick." Do you think that was the moment where you may have really got curious about what grounding was?
No, I had not a clue. I couldn't even understand what she was talking about. It was just, we were kids. And, but when we go into the teepees, they don't, they have rugs and stuff, but the main thing was don't wear the shoes. She just take the shoes off, they'll make you sick. And that's all I remember of it. I just logged that in my mind, or it came back to my memory, but 45 years later, 50 years later. And it was just one of the pieces that came together. But it was, they wore moccasin skin, animal skins, or were primarily barefoot when I was a kid. That was back in the 40s and 50s.
So they were grounding long before you knew what grounding was.
They were always grounded. They didn't know that being grounded was a problem because they were always grounded.
Now, is grounding maybe one of the reasons why people love going to the beach and feel so good when they're at the ocean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you go to the beach, I mean, everybody loves to go to the beach. Unfortunately, we go there sometimes and get sunburns, and that doesn't feel very good. But generally, if you go and when the human body is conductive, meaning you can touch something electrical and you can feel a shock like static electricity and so on. So the human body is conductive and sensitive to electrical. So when you go stand, first of all, the Earth has what we call a negative surface charge. And that word negative means that there's an abundance of free electrons on the surface of the Earth that can move rapidly and reduce charge, like lightning, for instance. That's an example. The Earth will reduce a lightning charge in nanoseconds. But on the surface of the Earth, there is no charge. There's no imbalance. So anyhow, so when you touch the Earth, then your body absorbs those free electrons and maintains the same electrical negative surface charge as the Earth itself does. In that state, you cannot have inflammation in a human body or an animal body. So anyhow, but when you put shoes on and stand above the Earth, or even a half inch above the Earth, then you, especially conductive sole shoes, or not conductive, non-conductive shoes, like the plastic sole shoes, then you're insulating yourself from the surface of the Earth. Now your body loses that negative charge, and your body becomes positive. And the real issue is the immune system. The immune system throughout all time, that's what got us here. That's who we are. I mean, we have a good immune system. We have health. So the immune system produces, for instance, a neutrophil, a white blood cell. Those are your, they compose your immune system. So anyhow, if you have a pathogen or virus, anything in your body, then the immune system will recognize it and send a neutrophil or other type white blood cell over to it. It'll swim over to it, and then it will wrap itself around the pathogen or the virus or whatever and encapsulate it. Then it will release what we call reactive oxygen species, and then they will rip the electrons from the pathogen's shell, from the pathogen cell. And that's how the immune system destroys pathogens. Now, through eons of time, that's the way it always was. And the body was always connected to the Earth, so it always had plenty of free electrons to go in after the oxidative burst, the immune system oxidation, and then clean up any remaining free radicals and reduce them, ground them, put them, bring them to an end. But when you're disconnected from the Earth, you're no longer connected to the Earth, then what happens is when the immune system releases these reactive oxygen species, if there are any left, they will within nanoseconds attach to a healthy cell and damage it because it's stealing an electron. It's just, they're electrically charged. This is just natural. So they're stealing an electron and damage a healthy cell. Then then a message goes out from that cell to the immune system, hey, something's still here getting me. So another neutrophil comes and swims over and cleans up that mess. And in the process, you haven't, because you don't have any redox potential or any free electrons to reduce any and mop up after these reactive oxygen blasts, then so there's they're electrical charges, so they're going to steal an electron from something. The closest thing is generally a healthy cell, and in the process they damage it, and it's just a vicious loop, a chain reaction, and so it's hard to explain this sometimes. But it's just the way the body works, the way the immune system works. We were always naturally grounded. And in 1960, and just prior to that, we lost our ground because that's when we invented polymers and plastics. Before then, we didn't have plastic pop out, nothing plastic. So in 1960, we invented the polymers, and the first thing we did was put them on the soles of shoes. So now everybody could afford shoes. They were cheap, and you didn't have to worry. You could wear them in the rain, and life was good. And so after about 1960 is when diabetes started to take off and grow exponentially, and then along came, lupus, MS, autism, diabetes. All of these chronic inflammation-related health disorders began to manifest in the early 60s, and they've grown exponentially ever since, and they're still growing. And today, to put that in perspective, in 1960, about 90% of the visits to a practitioner were for an infectious disease, acute injury, and childbirth. Today, 99% of all visits to a practitioner are for an inflammation-related health disorder, a word that didn't even exist 20 years ago. And so inflammation meaning inflamed bodies on fire. So this oxidation that we talked about with the neutrophils, those oxidative bursts it's like burning a log. You're feeding a fire, and then this fire is creating damage, and then the immune system spends all of its time trying to put the fire out, and it's feeding the fire itself and doesn't know it because it doesn't know it's no longer grounded. And so it's just we disconnected from nature in 1960 or thereabouts. We lost our ground. And anything electrical, in order to maintain electrical stability, has to be grounded. I learned that from the communication. The body is the most electrical thing in the environment. Every single cell in the body is electrical. All of our muscles, everything, our brain, everything operates electrically first, chemically second. And we're all popping pills thinking that's going to solve our problem. It's not. It's your electrical environment that is most significant, because your body evolved over a period of time in which the body was always grounded, and inflammation didn't exist. If throughout evolution we had inflammation like we do today, we would never have gotten here, because autism would have taken over, diabetes, all these childhood diseases now, and all. Health is the body's most natural state. As long as you have a good immune system, you're going to be healthy. And even if you don't eat perfectly, you're still going to be healthy. The body knows how to manage. And but when the body catches on fire, it loses its ground and it catches on fire. Then it just slowly burns itself. Oxidation slowly burns it up, and it starts out with anxiety, irritability, depression from high levels of cortisol, and then as it goes on, it ends up, manifesting with, fibromyalgia or lupus or MS or some kind of, arthritis. As the older you get, the arthritis become heavy. The cancer is an inflammation-related health disorder. If your immune system's working perfectly, you can't have cancer. You have to insulate yourself from the earth. You have to, you have to lose your ground. Because when the immune system is functioning as it developed in nature, um, it's like the animal world. You don't have the animals who live in nature, the wild animals who sleep on the earth, live on the earth. They don't have these modern health disorders. They don't have cardiovascular disease. They don't have MS, lupus. They just don't. They don't. But anyhow, so the whole point of it is we lost our ground in 1960, and because of that, our immune systems are no longer naturally grounded. And when we lose that ground, then we lose our the negative surface charge of the Earth, which is what reduces and maintains the immune system electrically stable. The immune system is electrical. It operates with reactive oxygen species. The word reactive is an electrical term. So, I'm sorry. I'll let you go. I'll throw it back to you for a minute.
You don't have to apologize. It's fascinating what your knowledge. Also, in your short film Down to Earth, Dr. Conover and her daughter. Can you tell that story?
It's like most all women. There's men and women are different. Women are more sensitive to their environment, and I think it's because of children, because they're always in tune with their children more so than men are. Men are out in the woods fighting the bear and bringing home the groceries, but the women are forever. They're totally in tune and sensitive to their children, so they sense things out here. The women sense things out here. Men are more cerebral. But anyhow, so what she did, she had a child who was very sensitive, and she accidentally learned that going outdoors and standing barefoot on the earth and holding her child's skin to skin, skin to her skin, that the child would automatically calm down and go to sleep. But she would go in the house, and then the child would wake up and start being irritated and so on. So what it is when you're connected to the earth, your body maintains this negative surface charge. I mean, you have these free electrons everywhere. You can breathe easier, you have more energy, and you have less pain, all that kind of stuff. So anyhow, when especially children, when you put them in a bed, usually it has foam, static light, which generates a lot of static electricity. They have blankets that create a lot of static electricity. So their bodies are electrically charged. And so they're kind of, their nervous system is being affected. It's very subtle, and sometimes it's not a problem. Other times it is. But some people are very sensitive, and her child was very sensitive. And she just learned that by standing barefoot on the earth and holding her child, then the baby calmed down and everything was fine. Now, if you go back through history, that's the way it always was. A mom barefoot on the earth holding a child. So that's all I can really tell you about that. Her story she describes in that video pretty well.
Right. Okay. Another question. How many scientists did you take your data to before someone listened to you?
Well, I started out in Arizona, and there's nobody home there, regards to what we were talking about. And then, so I went out to UCLA, met with a couple there, met with a couple of other sleep labs. So I imagine, a half a dozen or more, what you would call scientists. And and the thing I learned two things. One, it's too simple. Nobody wanted to associate with it, no matter what the results were, because it wasn't highfalutin and high tech and all this fancy stuff. Where they, in the medical world, they want to put their name on it. They want to invent a drug and make money off of it, or they want to invent a device, a medical device, and all of these things. They want to do sexy things.
Right.
I can tell you a story, and it's pretty typical. It kind of summarizes the whole scientific community. But we had a group of cardiologists down in Southern California that would in the early days, very early days, would start buying these products that we were manufacturing to do our studies with. And they kept asking for more and more. And anyhow, one day I was down there and I told them they were ordering something, and I said, I'll bring it over to you. I'd just like to meet you guys and see what you're doing. And he said, sure, come on over. So I went on over there, and and it's an office that had a half a dozen cardiologists, and they had half a dozen staff. And so I took the recovery bags in, gave them to him, and I said, what do you do with these things? And he says, oh, we use them, to keep everybody here off the hypertension meds. That's, being a cardiologist is pretty stressful, especially a surgeon, stressful. And so anyhow, I said, well, why don't you give them to your patients and who need them? Because this really helps, with cardiovascular. And he said, oh, we could never do that. He said, I forget exactly how he did it, but he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, look at that door. He says, every time somebody walks in that door, they're worth $5,000 to $10,000 to us just to run tests so we can find out what's wrong with them. Then if I don't get them on script, they're going to go to somebody else. So I have to get them on script, so they have to come back to me every 3 months or whatever. And he said, then look around. He says, we have this office building that we have to pay the rent on and do whatever. We have all this staff. We all have to, we all make our living. He said, been to medical school 12, 13 years to become a cardiologist. And it went on and on. And he said, not only that, he said, I'm married to a woman who's married to a doctor who wants to live like she's married to a doctor. So we all are. So the bottom line of it was very simple. One, you can't recommend something to anyhow because the AMA and the FDA and everything else is fairly controlled. But basically, he commented, he said, I can't tell people to go home, take their shoes off, and get well for free because they're not going. Who's going to pay my rent? But that's the trap that we've gotten ourselves into. It's a double-edged sword. We have all the benefits of all of the surgical and the medical procedures and the talent and the docs and everything, but on the other hand, preventive. It's like I grew up in an environment where it was about prevention. Keep the pasture clean and pristine, and everybody will be healthy. If you screw up the pasture, then you're going to screw up the health, and then everybody's going to get sick, and you got to go to the doc, and then you might as well sell the house and get ready to pay the doc. So it's the same story. Just that's how I looked at things, and that's how I ended up discovering all of this. And I had the time. I had made a little bit of money, and I had freedom, and I could do the research and promote the research. And the earthinginstitute.net, all of the studies, everything that's there, we produced over the last 24 years. And it's millions and millions of dollars worth of research. And it all comes down to it's very simple. In nature, health is the most natural state. Go look at the animals who live in nature. They're healthy. They don't have these health disorders. Bring those animals indoors, and then you better have a good vet lined up because you're going to be forever taking care of them at the vet. So anyhow, it's just the way it is. What grounding is really all about. You have to know one thing. I mean, it's about nature. It's who we are. We are nature of walking around. We are the earth of walking around. We are, this is who we are. And we disconnected from our host. And because of that, our bodies are on fire and we have all of these problems. We have all the benefits of living in nice, comfortable homes. And everybody has roofs over their heads. So, sunlight, we don't have to take vitamin D now. And, it goes on and on and on. But it really is, we need to reconnect with nature. If nature if grounding is what maintains the immune system electrically stable, then we have to incorporate grounding into our lifestyle and our living environments. You have to have grounded shoes. You have to have grounded carpets, grounded mattresses, grounded whatever. And this stuff's relatively easy to do. It just takes time, but most of all, it's about education. And it took 60 years, from 1960 to 2020 about. It took 60 years for us to get into this mess, and it's going to take 60 years for us to climb out. And you're going to do that by educating young moms and their children. Older people, they're on their way out. They're not going to do anything for you. They just need palliative care. But in order to change the world, you got to take care of the young moms and help them take care of their kids. And we need to get their feet back on the earth. Wear shoes on purpose when you need them. Don't wear them unless you have to. It's hard. We don't even have parks anywhere. We're really in trouble. But anyhow, so there's, we invent everything to compensate for when we break the laws of nature and try to, we have pills, we have this, we have that. So here we have to do the same thing. The number one thing that I try to get people to do is to go outdoors and take a chair if you have to, and just sit down, take your shoes off, put your bare feet on the earth, and leave them there for 30 minutes. And then notice the change in your skin color as your blood normalizes, your blood viscosity normalizes, and then the circulation improves. You have better color, you have better respiration, better oxygenation of the tissue. And that between those two, you reduce the inflammation in the body, take the stress off the immune system, then the immune system can go back to maintaining health. Where if you have inflammation, it's all tied up trying to put out that fire, and in the meantime, it's not taking care of the things that you would normally do, which end up with all of these inflammation-related health disorders. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. But there's a simple solution. It's just go out and sit barefoot on the earth and stay there until your pain goes away. And take care of you. Teach your, it goes on. I don't know what to say sometimes because I travel all over the world and we're totally insulated. We've totally insulated ourselves. A kid gets up in the morning, half the time they sleep with their shoes because they like their shoes. But they get up in the morning, they're on carpets, they're putting on rubber tennis shoe type things, and then they're running all day long and whatever, they're totally insulated. They don't touch the earth anymore. And it's, what they call the canary in the coal mine. I think when we do a lot of work with, have done a lot of work with the autistic community and ADD, ADHD, and a lot of these kids in these schools where they're catering to these type children. There's a couple of incidences where a couple of teachers reported to us about they had kids that would run outdoors at recess, and they would have to go towards the end of recess. They'd always have to go find them, and they were generally these playgrounds, school grounds, were completely 100% concrete or asphalt, and maybe a tree here or there. But these kids would run out behind the school and they would go to the bushes. These were kids that were autistic. They would run to the bushes and then they would sit there under the on the dirt under the bushes and hide there because that's where they felt good. They were grounded or calmed their nervous system, and they just felt better. And so then we started grounding kids with yoga type grounding mats in schools and things like that. But so it's. I talk to moms because that's the only way. Those people, they're the ones who take care of the children, and they're the ones who are going to produce the next generation. So you got to help them with their health. You have to take they're taking care of their moms who has all kinds of health problems, and so it's we don't have health anymore. We have to stop, figure this out, clean it up, and get grounded and get our health back. And
some of the some of the conditions that you spoke about that are prevalent today as a result of not being grounded, what has been some of the results that you've seen in improvements of health because of grounding?
If a person were to get grounded and stay grounded, you can't have inflammation. It's almost impossible to do that unless you're sleeping on a grounding mat or something like that. And and sleeping grounded is probably the number one thing you can do, because during sleep is when the body heals and restores itself. And but but the benefits are inflammation related health disorders resolve and go away. The body returns to normal. You can put the fire out, keep the inflammation out. The body is a self-healing mechanism, and it only knows to do one thing: return to normal.
Gotcha. How many published studies did you say that there were on earthing and grounding?
Yeah, there's over 30 peer-reviewed published studies on the Earthing Institute. There's probably another 100 published review papers in journals. And so what this is, it's an environmental health disorder, meaning we changed our environment. We moved off the earth in the last 60 years, and we're no longer grounded. And so because of that, our immune systems are dysfunctional. So it's what we call an environmental health disorder. We changed our environment. We changed our living environment. And there are other things, we changed our food. We've changed everything. We don't eat fresh food anymore. We don't do a lot of things we should be doing. And, but, yeah, if you go to the earthinginstitute.net and go to research, you'll find there's, a couple hundred papers.
Okay.
These were all produced in the last 20 years. And the Earthing book, there's over 1 million copies sold of the Earthing book. And then the Earthing movie is the short little video you're talking about, the Down to Earth one. That's been seen by over 100 million people. The Earthing movie it's only been on a short time, but it's been viewed by, I think, a little over 5 million people so far. So, but it's the moms of the world that recognize this. They know they're related to the earth. They know that they're connected to the earth, the moon, everything else. And so they kind of tune into it. Husbands are like, yeah, get out of here. This is crazy, whatever. But the women take care of their husbands, and the women take care of the children. The women take care of their moms. And so the woman is the caregiver of the family. So we try to support them as best we can.
I gotcha. So let's say someone, is determined that now they want to improve their health and get grounded, but they don't have the time freedom to maybe go out and sit in the yard or a park. Are there some products that are available that would allow someone to do it in home or at work?
Yes, what we did while we were doing the early studies back in early 2000 timeframe, we had to develop what we call ground planes, what I would call a ground plane. That's a conductive device that you can connect a wire to and connect it to the earth via an electrical ground or a ground rod. So it equalizes with the earth. As soon as you connect it to the earth, then the electrons come up the wire, and then then the pad, the conductive mat, is at earth potential. So when you lay on it, then we can, put all the electrodes, do whatever we were doing to measure the physiological effects that occur in the body when they're grounded. So in the process of developing those test products, test mats, the early grounding mats, the subjects, a lot of them had pain, and the pain would go away in 30 minutes, and they would want to be able to take their mat home with them. And oftentimes we would give them to them because we couldn't reuse them. And so then all of a sudden, as time went on, we did more studies, more people wanted them, and more people would come back and say, I need one for my mom, I need one for whoever, whatever. So we didn't, in the early days, we weren't looking at making products. We were just looking at the science, trying to understand why grounding reduces inflammation. We didn't think about products. But anyhow, so eventually the products that became a demand, and then we started buying more of the test material and making product. And then all of a sudden it just kind of turned into an accidental business. So today at earthing.com is the one that we started and that you all work with, is they have conductive mats. You just put them on your bed. They're the size of your bed, whatever size you want, or you have a single one, and you just lay it on your bed. It's made of carbon, and you put it on top of the mattress. You connect it to an electrical ground or to a ground rod outdoors out the window, and then you can put your feet over the top of it. Then you just lay down and go to sleep. You don't have to do anything extra, and that was what we learned early on. You cannot expect them to comply with anything if it isn't just natural or do what they normally do. They won't do it very long. So we thought, well, sleeping is the most important, so what we will do is make these mats and provide those. And so we started doing that, and we have millions and millions of them have been sold by now. And but again, and then we have a smaller one that's like 1 foot by 2 feet, and it's very inexpensive, and it has the ground rod, everything comes with it. And so you can just use it on your desk, or you can put your hands on it, or you can put it on the floor, put your feet on it, or you can put it in bed and lay on it, sleep on it. So there's many ways for you to do this that are relatively inexpensive. We've done everything we can to keep the cost way down, because this is more of a humanitarian effort than it is to try to get rich. Although everybody and their brother is on Amazon trying to, get rich off of it. But we provide all the education and all of the research, all of the support. We have a half a dozen people. That's all they do all day long is to answer questions. So, but anyhow, so yeah, there are products. You can go to earthing.com. That's a good place to look. But I encourage everybody, before you do anything, just go out and experience grounding. If you go out and sit on a chair, just in a little bit of shade, so a little bit of indirect sunlight, get your vitamin D, your respiration improves, your circulation improves, and you'll feel so much better 30 minutes later. It's just unbelievable. And that's what I tell every working woman, for sure. I said, all day long, you're exposed to all of this fight or flight responses. And, I call them coyotes, but your cortisol, your fight or flight is forever elevated. And so your body gets filled with cortisol. So at the end of the day, when you go home, just take a half hour out and go outdoors and ground yourself to the earth and drain out all of that cortisol, drain out all of that fight or flight hormones, and then the body will release and relax, put out the inflammation, then your body can recover, and then you can go back in the house, feed the kids, and feel better and sleep better. And that's free. It's free. It's free, but it's essential. It's part of your immune system. The earth is the ground. It's the base. It's like, I don't know how to say it sometimes. It's just really important. You have to reconnect with nature. You have to put your foot back on the earth and absorb that negative energy of the earth. Negative is not a negative. It's meaning an abundance of, electrically it means no charge. So you absorb that energy into your body, and it puts out the fire of inflammation in your body, and then you release. You have a big release. You breathe. Everything changes. Everything changes, and it's remarkable.
See, let's say someone is kind of on the fence about this, and the difference is you giving them one piece of advice, what would it be?
What I just said, take whether it's a child, an adult, male or female, it does not matter. Almost everybody has chronic pain of some kind in their body. Almost everybody has sleep problems. Hardly anybody sleeps. So if you will go outdoors or go to the park if you have to, wherever you have to, go to the creek, go to the stream, do whatever, but go somewhere where you can sit in nature, barefoot on the earth. If it's just in the backyard, that's fine. But put your feet on the earth and just sit there for 30 minutes. I guarantee you, it's life-changing. And just notice your pain, notice your respiration, just notice what happens in your body. And then when you get up, you have more energy. You have just, that's the one thing I would tell anybody. Don't buy anything, don't do anything, just go take your shoes off, put your feet on the earth, and experience this. And then to get a better understanding of the science, watch the Earthing movie or the Down to Earth video. It's only a few minutes. And then go to the earthinginstitute.net and look at the studies. You can't deny it. There's $20 million worth of research there. We didn't spend all that money and kept spending all that time if there weren't results. Every study we ever produced is published. That's a rare thing. And it's just nature. This isn't rocket science. This is pure, simple physics of grounding. And everything in your environment is electrically grounded to the earth.
Well, that was some great advice. And I want to thank you again for your time and for agreeing to do this with me. It's been a pleasure. If people want to find out more information, where can they find you online or on social media?
Well, just Clint Ober. I'm on Facebook, things like that. And but the Earthing Institute or earthing.com or just my name is out there. Just punch it, something will come up. You'll find me. And if you have any questions, for sure, let us know. Because that's what we do primarily. We're primarily about education. This is the educational movement.
All right. Well, Mr. Ober, I appreciate your time. Like I said, I'm very, very grateful that you agreed to do this with me. And I want to get as many people knowledgeable about grounding and earthing and the health benefits. So thank you so much.
All right. If you have any questions or anything, be sure and get back in touch with me. And I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Take care.